Welcome everyone to the information session about Artists in the Library program. The program deadline will be September 30th, so just under a month. So there is still plenty of time to learn about the program and to connect and to, of course, prepare your application. Next slide, please. So before we begin, I would like to let everybody know that ASL interpretation is available to the right of your screen for the duration of the session. You can move the screen to make the ASL interpreter's windows larger or smaller, depending on your needs. To turn on closed captioning, select the CC icon to the bottom right of your screen. If you cannot see or access either, please let us know in the chat. You can enlarge any side of the screen by moving the split screen bar in the middle of the screen in the direction of the side of the screen that you would like minimized. We also have a chat box available if you have any comments or if you would like to say hello, which you've already done, which is amazing. There's also a Q&A box, which you might not immediately see, or you might, but if you click 3 dots in a circle that says more, you will be able to see Q&A. So what I would like to ask you to do, if you have questions that you want specifically answered by one of the presenters, please try to put those questions on the Q&A box so that we make sure we answer them at some point in the presentation. We will have dedicated time for your questions at the end, at which point we'll review all the questions in the Q&A box, as well as you will have an opportunity to ask a question directly. Next slide, please. I would like to read a land acknowledgement that Toronto Arts Council currently has in place. Toronto Arts Council respectfully acknowledges the diversity of Indigenous cultures and their connection to the natural world. We are privileged to share. We honor the Wendat, the Anishinaabe peoples, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, most recently the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and others who have walked this land or paddled these waters. We are grateful to the ancestors and elders of their peoples and to their descendants who live and work with us on the back of the great turtle. Next slide, please. So what can you expect in the session today? For the first half an hour or so, I am going to be talking about the granting program, focusing on reviewing the guidelines, eligibility, available supports. This is going to be essentially, if you looked at the guidelines document, that's essentially what I'm going to be covering, but in alternate format. So if you're very well familiar with that, you might want to, do a different chore in the meantime, or spend this time however you want. Next, I will pass it over to Jeannie Kim, who is an artist and a grant recipient in this program in 2023, to talk about how it went that time and share firsthand experience with the program. And then we will have Justine and Naomi, our partners at Toronto Public Library, join and talk about the specifics of working with TPL in the context of this program. And finally, we'll have a Q&A that I mentioned before, where you'll be able to share your questions and get them answered directly. I want to point out that all the information shared today will be shared with you separately in a follow-up email. I also will be sharing some information in the chat. We'll share all the slide decks, context, and also we'll share the recording of the session after will process it, and it will also be available online. So you don't need to worry about specifically taking notes for everything, just whatever makes sense for you personally. And I think we can have the next slide. I guess I will back up just for a second to reintroduce myself. So my name is Lena. I'm a program manager at TEC who specifically is in charge of Artists in the Library granting program on Toronto Arts Council side. I use she, her pronouns by way of visual description. I'm a white woman in my late 30s. I have a bob haircut, eyeglasses with black frame. I'm wearing a white t-shirt, and I'm sitting in a room with a green wall, and a little bit of my bookcase is in the frame as well. And I am basically the person you can reach out with any questions that you might have about everything that has to do with the application process to this program, from eligibility to how better shape your budget. It's really that I'm here to support all of you in your applications. So what is Artists in the Library? It is a TEC strategic program. And the reason this is important is because at TEC, you can apply for up to one discipline and one strategic program per year. So knowing that Artists in the Library is a strategic program helps you to understand your eligibility. And then if you have further questions, you can ask me. This program offers grants of up to $20,000 to create and deliver community-engaged arts programming in any artistic discipline. Funded projects will take place at one of the Toronto Public Library branches in Etobicoke, North York, Scarborough, East York, and York. This program is, of course, in partnership with Toronto Public Library, and it provides opportunities for Toronto artists to explore your art practice in a community setting and access space and facilities for arts programming and presentation in library branches. The deadline is September 30th for the applications. An important thing is that the project must take place at the assigned branches, so it's not something that you can apply for thinking that, I will get the funding and then I will do it at some entirely different location. It's a space and place-based program that will be specific to the location assigned to you. Next slide, please. Thank you. I am sorry, I'm just going to quickly look at the chat for a second just to make sure that there is no urgent questions. Okay, somebody asked about the recording. Yes, there will be a recording, and I will check the chat back after my presentation is done. So what does this program support? It supports free community-engaged arts programming taking place in September to December 2026. So important to point out that even though you're applying in September 2025, this is for the projects taking place next year, and not only next year, but within a specific time frame that is September to December for specific on-site locations. And I'm saying it because, sometimes your plans, you already have some other engagements during that time. So I advise you to look at the guidelines and see if this is a good fit, not only from a position of, whether you're eligible or it's a suitable project, but also will the dates work for you? Because while we offer some flexibility to the recipients in the event of, unforeseen circumstance, you cannot plan, for example, to apply this year and do something in 2027 or do something sooner. It's a very specific, not for place, but also for, for the time frame. So community engagement is a requirement in this program, but its format may vary. Activities that are funded through the program may include exhibitions, installations, performances, concerts, screenings, readings, filmmaking, storytelling, workshops, artist talks, participatory programs, arts education and mentorship programs, and other arts programming. And as I'm reading this, I'm realizing, and I do know this already, that pretty much anything can be funded through the program, provided that it could be feasibly and safely done within the context and the environment of the public library. But there is no, limitations in terms of discipline or genre or format as such. The only thing that anything that's permanent, specifically permanent exhibitions and installation, are not eligible for this program. So the projects funded are time-based, and as mentioned, it will run between September and December 2026. I want to point out that September to December doesn't mean that your project will take up all 4 months. It's just the window within the delivery of the projects on site at the branch is possible. All funded projects will be produced by the grant recipients and hosted and supported by the assigned library branch. And all projects must be delivered on site at the branch and within branch operating hours. Next slide, please. Thank you, everybody who is using Q&A box. I want to remind everybody that if your questions are related to the program, that would be great if you can put those questions in Q&A. If not, I'll try to catch those anyway. So I get calls and emails often from the artists saying, well, what kind of project do you want to fund? Like what's successful? What should I apply with so that I can get funding? Or like, give me an example, right? And oftentimes I say, you know what? It doesn't matter, because actually the assessing panel is being assembled specifically in response and depending on who applies in particular round. And then that panel selects applications that are getting funded. So really, it's a very dynamic and responsive program, and you shape with your applications who then assesses the applications and how the funding decisions are being made. And anything new can happen within the program, of course, within the limitations of working with TPL and the space, but there is really no limit in terms of like creative approach or what you can offer. And I'm just going to read a few examples, and some of those examples I'm just, I put it from my memory over the years of what type of activities were funded, and some of these actually excerpts from specific project descriptions, just to give you an idea how different and how like the even varied in scale the funded projects can be. So really, you can apply with pretty much anything. So over the years, this program funded drop-in clay workshops, songwriting and song recording workshops, community co-created theater production, visual art workshop series culminated in an exhibition and or artist book, photography and storytelling classes, community engaged dance program featuring dance workshops and performances of different dance styles, mentorship program for transgender and non-binary individuals in music industry, intergenerational zine making program, concert series, and workshop series for the Filipino youth aged 15 to 25 to develop creative ways of storytelling by learning about Philippines history, society, and resilience. And I know that's a very specific description, but that's actually a description of the program that you saw a picture of on the very first slide of this deck. And I will share that deck, of course, with you, and you'll see the picture and the credit. That was from Kamalan Consciousness Project funded through this program in 2023 for Maryvale branch. Next slide, please. So what does this program offer? Of course, it offers funding, and this year it's up to 20,000. Some of you may remember that in the past it was a fixed amount of 20,000. We shifted to open up more flexibility, so you actually could propose smaller scale projects and request less money. I want to make a note that I would advise against very small proposals, right? So you want your budget to be substantial and you want your offering to be substantial and in line with the budget requested. So if you are requesting something that's, let's say $500, let's say you want to run one workshop, you could apply with it. However, you have to keep in mind the relationship that you need to develop with the local community and with the branch, and the effort that goes into building those relationships. And then you need to think about, like, is it even worth applying for such a small amount, and really factor all the administrative and community building work that you're going to be doing as part of the project development and delivery. So this grant may cover up to 100% of the project costs. So you're not required to have additional funding in this program. However, you are welcome to. So sometimes the project has much bigger budget. You are doing something that's very ambitious, that involves, other partners, that involves much more money. That's totally fine, but that's not a requirement, unlike some other programs at TAC and otherwise. You, of course, will also receive access to space and staff support at assigned Toronto Public Library branch, which will be subject to availability and capacity. You will be covered under TAC liability insurance. You will also receive support with and covering the cost of the vulnerable sector check for projects that require it. Up to 3 individuals per project will be paid for. And you will also receive some support with marketing and promotion. And the last 2 points, Naomi and Justine, I'm sure, will be talking in more detail about that. And we can also cover it in Q&A. Next slide, please. And I see some further requests in the chat about sending the recording and sending the slides. So please be assured that those will be sent to you in a follow-up email after the session. If not today, then tomorrow or in a few days. All right, so eligible branches. This year, we do not have a specific list. You essentially can apply to work in any geographic area of the city outside of downtown core. You could specify a particular branch that, let's say, you already have relationship with, or maybe you have relationship with local community, or maybe that's your local home branch that you really love and want to do your artistic work in. If you do specify a branch of your choice, please note that it's not a guarantee that that will be the branch assigned to you if you get the grant. However, if you have that preference, you can certainly include it, and you can include the rationale for that, because if you have a strong rationale, the likelihood that that will be an assigned branch if there is a capacity on the Toronto Public Library to support. So areas eligible include Etobicoke, York, North York, Toronto, and East York and Scarborough. And for Toronto and East York, the downtown locations are not eligible. Roughly, we define downtown for the purpose of this program as area south of St. Clair, east of Jane, west of Don Valley. And if you have specific question of eligibility of the location, please get in touch with me and we can discuss. Next slide, please. Who can apply? So this is quite general eligibility for Toronto Arts Council funding in general. In this program, though, it is open for individual artists, arts organizations, collectives working in any artistic discipline. And first-time applicants are encouraged to discuss the eligibility with the program manager in advance of applying. When we do say that, we don't mean that you have to necessarily reach out to me and talk to me before applying. You can, if you read the guidelines, everything is clear to you. You absolutely can just go ahead and draft your application and submit it. However, if you want to get your questions answered, or even, kind of outline the idea of the project to see if it's something that could be feasible. Not that I'm the one who says, yes, it's a good fit, or no, it's not a good fit, but I can offer some insight into whether it might or might not be a good fit and what could be tweaked for it to be a better fit. So when we say, individual professional artists, a professional artist is someone who has developed their skills through training and or practice, is recognized as such by artists working in the same artistic field, actively practices their art, seeks payment for their work, and has a history of public presentation. Generally speaking, we exercise flexibility in interpreting this definition. And normally, if you think that you're a professional artist, then you probably are. And we're not the ones to tell you if you are or are not. However, if you're not sure where you kind of fall in terms of eligibility, you're always welcome to reach out and discuss. Please note that you cannot apply to this program both as an individual and as part of an organization or collective applying to the same program. However, if you are named as a project contributor on multiple applications, that's entirely okay. Next slide, please. All right, so for individuals, you must be a Canadian citizen or permanent resident or have an application pending for permanent resident status. You need to live in the city of Toronto. And also you cannot apply to fund something that's directly related to your undergraduate or graduate studies. Next slide, please. So for organizations and collectives, organization is pretty straightforward, must be incorporated nonprofit. For collectives, however, it really can be very, very informal. You can decide to form a collective to apply to this program, pick any name, have your collective members listed, and you just need to be prepared to have an account in the exact name that is the name of the collective if you get a grant. So you don't need to worry about it ahead of time. You don't need any sort of formalities or incorporation or anything like that. But what you need to ensure if you're applying as a collective that most artists in the collective are the residents of the city of Toronto. For organization, what matters is the address of the organization itself. Next slide, please. Projects involving deaf artists and artists with disabilities may apply for an additional TC grant by completing the accessibility expenses section of the application and including the requisite information in their budget. A TC accessibility grant will provide up to a maximum of $5,000 toward accessibility costs for artists incurred during the project. And this may include, but is not limited to ASL interpretation, audio description, closed captioning, communications assistant, attendant care, support workers, and equipment rentals, and so on. I want to underscore that this grant is specifically to support accessibility needs of the artists working on the project. So either the applicant, in case of an individual applicant, or any of your collaborators or any of the known contributors if you're applying as an organization. This cannot be used to offer accessibility supports to your audience. However, you are encouraged to offer accessibility supports to your audience. That just needs to come out of the main project budget as opposed to TAC accessibility grant. And if this is unclear, please reach out to me and we can talk through this in detail. Next slide, please. Um, in addition, there is a TC accessibility support being offered. Currently, it's up to $500 per year per applicant. So applicants who are deaf or have a disability and need support to complete their application can apply for funds to cover the cost of assistance from application support service provider. And really, application support service provider is any person who is helping you with the task of composing and submitting your application. And apply for funds just mean reach out to me, connect me to your service provider, and the service provider will be paid directly after the work is done. This portion does not depend on whether your application is approved or not. This is specifically to cover the cost of supporting you in the application process. Next slide, please. So how do you apply for this grant? First of all, of course, read the program guidelines carefully. And that's my presentation is essentially an alternative format for the program guidelines. Most information in the guidelines, which is a big PDF, is covered in the slides as well. If you want to talk through the guidelines, you can call me or schedule a meeting with me, and I'll put a link for that in the chat. And I'll offer you another format of this information. But generally, guidelines is where it's all begin. Then you create a TAC Smart Simple account if you don't have one yet. In addition to reading guidelines, I always recommend reading the actual application form very carefully before you start even thinking about your grant, because the form really guides you in, it makes very clear what the process of application is. Oftentimes I get calls from the artists asking questions who have not yet looked at the form, but the form actually, not only it answers your questions, it also gives you questions to ask me to then, proceed with working on your application. So that's usually super helpful. It also helps you to plan your time. You will see that it asks you, for example, for the list of all of your contributors and their bios and their CVs. And it also says, well, make sure that they know that you are applying and put in their names in your application. So you need to plan to actually let the folks know, that they included and request their bios. Please note that it doesn't mean that obviously there is no obligation or there is no contracts in place. It doesn't mean that those contributors will have to be definitely the exact people who will deliver the project if it's funded, but that's a map of your project and what you wanted to do. For the first time applicants, as mentioned, talk to me. You don't have to talk to me, but it might be helpful. And of course, submit before the deadline. Again, the deadline is Tuesday, September 30th at 11:59 p.m. Please do not submit. I do not recommend leaving it up to the last minute, because this is when a lot of people are submitting and the portal might be a bit slower than usual. Next slide, please. All right, so let's talk about grant writing tips. Of course, it's not possible to cover all the grant writing tips in such a short time, but main thing, give yourself time. And it's not even about starting super early, it's more about understanding the workload. And for that, look at the form and understand what you need to do. Craft your project summary and overview. Those are super important, because that's what the panel and the partners go back to remind themselves of what the project is. And this is where you basically say what it is that you are wanting to do and requesting the funding for. I recommend using clear, specific, and direct language, and avoid using maybe very highly disciplined specific language, and kind of understand that many people who will be reviewing and assessing your application might not at all be familiar with your discipline, because we usually have 5-6 people on the panel. They represent disciplines in the application pool as best as we can, but it's not possible to represent all the genre or nuanced disciplines. And so, there will be a theater artist reading spoken word application or dance application or a visual arts application, right? And so they need to be able to understand what it is that you're trying to do. You want to craft your work plan very carefully in a way that shows that you know what you're doing. You want to think about outreach and audience development. Of course, you want to create a realistic budget. We suggest that administrative costs are not exceeding 10%. I want to point out that a lot of things that artists often put as admin, I would not put as an admin. For example, if you put your project coordination or curation, put it under artistic fees, right? Because that's your artistic work to bring a project to life. Whereas admin is something more, specifically admin and logistics related. Of course, you need to be very careful about support material. That is very, very important section of the application. You want to show enough, but not too much, because if you upload in too many photographs and videos, then you don't know which part of that the panel will see. But if you upload a few, but specific what is relevant to your proposed project and what you really want them to see, then you're kind of directing what the impression your application is going to give. With that said, just overall grant writing tips. I want to point out that this is not a writing competition. And this is something that I always remind to the assessment panel, that we're not assessing the writing, right? Do not worry so much about quality of your writing. What you should be concerned with is whether the project comes through your writing and is legible and clear for people who are reading it. And for that, you can actually give it to anybody to read. In fact, the person more removed from the arts would be the best reader, because they will not know, the details of your project. Is it clear to them? Is it clear to, anybody who reads it without any pre-existent knowledge of your art practice and your work, what it is that you want to do, how much, like if you're talking about workshop series, how many theories, how much are you paying for each workshop to the artist if somebody is working with you, and stuff like that, right? So just clarity. Next slide, please. And I talked a little bit about how the applications are being assessed already. But of course, grants are awarded on a competitive basis by a grant review panel of practicing artists with input from representatives from the program partner. In this case, it's Toronto Public Library. Grant review panels are composed to ensure equitable representation from TAC's equity priority groups, as well as geographical communities and artistic disciplines. And the assessment criteria are artistic merit, suitability of the proposed project for the setting of a public library, quality of experience the proposed project will provide to the participants and branch customers, demonstrated ability to carry out the project as outlined, and financial viability of the projects and of the project. And all those are being considered together and kind of interdependently. When in the previous slide, I talked about audience development and outreach, I want to point out that even though Toronto Public Library promotes the projects funded through this program on their website, and even though you are working with the branch community, you should not expect audience just being there. You as an artist is still responsible to make sure there is a plan on how to let community know that this offering is available, that this programming is happening, and to make sure that there is audience or participants to your project. Next slide, please. The key dates to keep in mind is September 30th is the deadline, and the results will be available in December this year. Then in winter, spring 2026, there will be some formalities and payments will be distributed to the artists who submit the paperwork, which is very minimal with TAC. We will have a program orientation that specifically outlines, the stages and the timelines of the program for grant recipients. And then you will have, you will be connected with the library branches, and you will have other contacts at TPL to support you through the process. You will also have some paperwork to go through with TPL at that point. And the actual programming at the branches will take place anywhere in between September and December 2026. Final reports will be due 90 days after project completion date. You put project completion date when you submit your application. That project date can potentially change in the future just by contacting me if need be. And all major changes must be communicated to the program manager. Any minor changes are kind of to be expected, but if you apply to do something and then suddenly you're doing something else, that has to be communicated and worked through with myself and Toronto Public Library. Next slide, please. I think I talked about it already, but so September to December is the time frame for on-site projects. Important thing to keep in mind that specific duration and specific scheduling will largely depend on your project, but it also will depend on capacity and availability at the assigned branch. So, when in your work plan you put, my workshop dates will be da-da-da, you can put specific dates, but it's kind of a mock-up. It's just to give panel the idea of the structure, the actual dates, and it's really important that you understand it and that you are flexible in that sense, that it will depend on the working hours of assigned branch, their availability, their existing programming, and it will be all worked out together with your partner at the branch once you get the grant. Next slide, please. And this is my contact, and I will also put this in the chat. I did go a little bit over time. I am sorry about that. I will be answering some questions in the chat, and then I will be answering some of the questions afterwards in the Q&A. And right now, following this guidelines overview, the exciting part, I'm going to turn it over to Jeannie, who is an artist and a grant recipient in the program, to talk about your experience. Jeannie, over to you.
All right, thank you so much. I just wanted to make sure I'm spotlighted before I started. Can everyone hear me okay? Good. All right, so I'll get started. Hi, everyone. My name is Jeannie Kyungjin Kim, and I'm an artist educator living in Markham right now. And as a quick visual description, I am an East Asian woman in her early 30s, and I have long, straight black hair and wearing a navy top. I have a background in fine arts, art history, and art education, and my artistic practice involves bringing traditional Korean art methods to local communities. Next slide, please. There is a specific type of Korean traditional painting from the Joseon dynasty, which was between the 18th and 19th centuries, called 책거리, that I was personally drawn to. So 책 means books in Korean, and the suffix 거리 loosely translates to things, leaving us with a painting style depicting a scholar's books and tools. These types of paintings were typically seen in libraries, scholars' workspaces, and even behind a king's throne to be inspired by knowledge all around us. What is interesting to note is that the objects depicted were sometimes from different parts of the world, including China and Europe. As a Korean Canadian artist and educator, I was inspired by the symbolism and the visual elements of 책거리 to create my own pieces incorporating my Eastern and Western influences. Next slide, please. I incorporated Chekori as a framework for my master's thesis in art education in 2020. I used Chekori Korean watercolors in my one-room apartment in Montreal as a way for me to connect to my heritage during the COVID-19 pandemic when we were all forced to isolate from the world. This time allowed me to reflect on my surroundings and the tools that were necessary to conduct my own master's research. And so I chose to depict this idea using the Chekori style. During the same year, I met an artist named Soyeon Kim when she was exhibiting a diorama piece at a storefront window. She's a children's picture book artist, educator, and illustrator with a Korean background as well. We connected through our love for Korean culture and our desire to share it with the local community. A part of my master's thesis asked me how I would bring this knowledge to the community. And so with Soyeon listed as a collaborator, I applied to the Artists in the Library grant in 2023 and was successful. The purpose of the project was to bring accessible art workshops to North York, specifically at Ada Nona Westina branch, because this specific library reopened with a new name. The origin of the Wendat word, Ada Nona Westina, meaning where they had a good, beautiful life, was shared at the beginning of each session to ground the participants and for them to reflect on the land and the community they are a part of. We shared traditional and modern artists working with the Chekori style, and then encouraged participants of all ages to create their own piece in 3 sessions. We designed 3 offerings, so one each for adults, families, and children, for intergenerational exchanges to occur at the closing reception. During these sessions at the library, we asked the participants to reflect on their own current lives and what they would depict in their own Chekori paintings to show to the world. Some of the prompts we asked included what possessions or objects do you hold dear, what story does it tell, and what book do you resonate with the most? For adults, we reflected further on what the word culture means to them and how they can share their lived experiences through the objects depicted in their Chekori piece. We also ensured that the sessions are inclusive for all skill sets by having printouts of traditional Korean objects, inked by Soyeon herself, prepared for everyone to color in if they did not feel comfortable creating an artwork from scratch. This mindset also allowed for drop-in participants at the library so that we can include as many community members as possible. After 3 offerings for 3 different demographics, all of their Chekori pieces were printed in vinyl wall prints and were displayed in one temporary mural, symbolizing the community coming together in one bookshelf. This view is from the inside of the program room. And this view is from the outside of the program room because the glass allowed for us to utilize both sides for further engagement. We used blue masking tape for easy removal after the mural being up for 3 weeks. This mural was a reminder to continue engaging with the local community and to celebrate diverse culture and each other. Lastly, I also made sure that there was a physical takeaway for the participants and library visitors. So I created a documentation piece of all the participants' work, further symbolizing all the community members coming together in one book for their own bookshelf. So the left is a page from the adult participants, The middle is a page from the family participants. So this was an adult and a child producing a piece together. And the right page is from the children and youth participants. Yeah, and this is the first slide again. Thank you for listening. And if you would like to see my website and stay in touch via email, that is up on the screen. Thank you.